think is literally, not figuratively, the greatest leader, House Speaker in American history. And Mignon Moore, a mover and a shaker in politics, and Ray Curry, a true champion for the dignity of workers. And everyone here from the civil rights community and Congress, it's wonderful to be with you on this special day. Yesterday morning, on what would have been Dr. King's 91st birthday, I attended the Sunday services at Ebenezer, and it was deeply meaningful and moving for me. It was because we face another inflection point in our nation's history, one that's going to determine what this country looks like several decades from now. You know, this is a time for choosing. Will we choose democracy over autocracy, or community over chaos, love over hate? These are the questions of our time that I ran for president to try to help answer, and that Dr. King's life and legacy, in my view, show us the way forward. We just have to look back. We got to be prepared. With all of you here, together we made some important progress. 2 years ago, our economy was on its back, flat on its back. People were hurting, particularly minority communities. Black Americans and other people of color were disproportionately hit. And Kamala and I and our administration acted decisively with the help of people in this room to not only rescue the economy from a pandemic downturn, but to lay the foundation for a stronger and more resilient and more equitable economy for decades to come. If you hold just a second, one of the things that I wanted to, it's a slight digression, but one of the big issues was with the pandemic. I wanted to make sure that we spent the time, effort, and had the mechanism to make sure that minority communities were not left behind, that we're not left in the lurch. And the highest percentage of workers, minority communities, were treated as, I mean, it was a single effort we had. And I'm very proud of the folks who ran that show that we got it done. We got it done. You know, I'm of the view, and have been my whole career, which is only a couple years, I know I don't look that way. But I'm tired of trickle-down economics. You and I have never liked it, have we? And I think the economy, the way it should grow in America, is from the bottom up and the middle out. That way, poor folks have a shot, middle-class people do well, and the wealthy still do very well. They still do very well, but they start to pay their fair share. 2 years in, it's clearer than ever that I think our economic plan is working. We've created nearly 11 million jobs, the strongest job growth on record for any president at this point in history. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in 50 years, and black unemployment is near record lows. Wages for black workers are up, 2 strongest years ever for small business creation, including black small businesses. Across the board, American families have a bit more breathing room. More black Americans have health insurance than ever in American history. And as of this 1st of January, our legislation is kicking in from last year. Insulin now is capped at $35 a month for seniors on Medicare, instead of paying up to hundreds of dollars a month. And big pharma, under the law we finally got passed with not much help from the other team, big pharma is in a situation where if they raise the drug price beyond the rate of inflation, they're going to pay stiff penalties for doing so. That's a fact. And so we're trying to bring things under control. We're seeing the same progress on energy costs. Folks can get tax credits when they install energy-efficient appliances in their home, like an energy-efficient dishwasher or heat pumps or electric vehicles, if you're able to buy one of those. We're investing in those fence-line communities that have suffered the most consequences and been smothered by pollution, like Cancer Alley in Louisiana, or my home state, Route 9 in Delaware, where all the mills are, where the oil refineries are. And we're making sure that these communities benefit from the biggest investment ever, with cleaner and safer environment. And the jobs that are going to go to clean up the environment are going to go to the folks in that community, good paying jobs. They're the ones that are going to get the jobs. And so, folks, these are all pieces of a big new law that we passed. Now they're kicking in. Americans can start to feel the benefits of these laws in their everyday lives. But that's not all. We're implementing a once-in-a-generation infrastructure law with equity at its center, and I mean that sincerely, with equity at its center. My Justice 40 initiative means 40% of all the benefits in this infrastructure law, which is over $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years, those benefits of certain federal investments flow directly to disadvantaged and underserved communities. For example, 70% of the new infrastructure investments for shifting to electric school buses, for example, so far have gone to disadvantaged communities where kids aren't breathing that polluted air from diesel buses. 70% so far has gone to minority communities, and a lot more is coming. We're modernizing American roads, bridges, ports, airports across the country. And we're beginning to replace every poisonous lead pipe in America, every single one. We've already started, so every child in America, so every American can turn on a faucet at home or at school and drink clean water. A significant number of minority communities can't access affordable high-speed internet, as you all know, and you've told me for years. Well, we're going to make sure that every community has access to affordable, high-speed internet so no parent has to drive to a McDonald's parking lot to have their kid sign up for a connection to be able to do their homework. By the way, it's going to create millions of jobs in the meantime. Folks, look, speaking of education, instead of photo ops, and I know I spent a lot of time, some here from Delaware know I'm a big Delaware State guy. I went to the University of Delaware, but my political foundation was Delaware State College, HBCU. I said I was going to help HBCUs that haven't been getting the help they need. You know, the folks at HBCUs are as competent as anybody else, but guess what? They don't have the laboratories. They don't have the funding because they don't have the endowments to build the laboratories for these good, new paying jobs. And so we've delivered nearly $6 billion in funding to HBCUs to invest in next generation of black leaders. That's a record, and that's a fact, and it's not going to stop. To help close the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap under Secretary Fudge, she is leading the effort. We're expanding efforts to build black generational wealth like every other person who's built their wealth. How'd they build it? Homes. They invested in the equity in their homes. That's how it got built. You know, if you build, in the last 25 years, if you build a housing development on one side of an interstate highway, and you built the same one on the opposite side, and one is predominantly black and the other is predominantly white, guess what? The value of the exact same home, built by the exact same builder, is more valuable on the white side of that highway than on the black side. That's a fact. So we're going to aggressively combat racial discrimination in housing, including working to restore the rule that says if a community gets a federal housing aid, it's not enough just to say it won't discriminate. It has to be meaningful, affirmative steps to overcome patterns of segregation and give everybody a fair shot that lives there. The same thing. And by the way, if you live in one of those neighborhoods and you have the same exact car I have in the other neighborhood, you pay more for your insurance in that side. No basis for it, none at all, other than you're black and I'm white. We're also working with leaders to strengthen programs to redress the negative impacts of redlining. One of the things, I was a young county councilman, that's what almost lost me election, but I'm very proud of it, trying to take care of redlining and get rid of discrimination. We're launching a $1 billion pilot project funded by my bipartisan infrastructure law that Nancy made sure we got passed. Nance, thank you. To help reconnect communities where highways have physically broken them up and locked out predominantly black communities from opportunities for economic growth. In the city of Wilmington, Delaware, where I'm from, well, guess what? I-95 goes up through what used to be a predominantly black neighborhood. Well, now you got 7, 8, 9 lanes, common exits and on-ramps and off-ramps that divide the community. It's lost its coherence. Well, there's remediation money in the infrastructure bill to be able to pave over that, to have So that's a tunnel. Instead, you put parkland in there, put recreation facilities in there, community centers in there. And finally, we're addressing the cruel fact that a black family's homes, often appraised, as I said, at much lower value than the homes owned, the same home owned by white families. Black small businesses are the engines and the economic glue of any community. I need not tell anybody in this room. Restaurants, law firms, barbershops, beauty shops. These are the folks that hold the community together. They're the ones that sponsor the Little League. They're the ones that sponsor the church events. They're the ones that sponsor the local volunteer fire company. They're the ones that sponsor everything. They keep a community going. Well, to hold that community together, we need to encourage more of that. So I'm proud I signed a law that permanently authorizes the Minority Small Business Development Agency for the first time in our history. And it gives expanded authority to help even more black-owned businesses grow. My administration also oversees hundreds of billions of dollars in federal contracts, from everything from refurbishing the deck of an aircraft carrier to installing handrails in a federal building. Well, I determined a long time ago when I first got in that, there's a law that was passed in the late 30s, 1930s, that says that if you, in fact, are going to spend taxpayers' dollars and the president has to authorize where that's spent, it should be spent on American-made products by American businesses. Well, guess what? We're doing it. And an awful lot of people are going to work. An awful lot of people are going to work. And folks, in that, when I sign those, when we award those contracts, I made a commitment, increasing from what is now roughly 10% of those contracts going to minority businesses to 15%. To 15% by 2025. And the share of those dollars are going to go to small business and disadvantaged businesses, including black and brown-owned businesses. That's going to mean an additional $100 billion going into the creation of these small businesses. $100 billion. And we're doing all this while being fiscally responsible. We're making sure the wealthiest and biggest corporations finally start paying their fair share. Far from it so far. If you hold a second, we're talking about, you've heard me say, and I apologize for repeating it. There are over 55 companies in the Fortune 500 companies that made $40 billion in 2022, or 2021. You know how much they paid in taxes? Zero. Not one single penny. But if you're a local cop, you're a local firefighter, you're a local nurse, you're going to pay 24 to 26%. And they're paying zero. Well, we increased the corporate minimum tax. I want to go back at it. Increased the minimum tax to 15%. Now, that's not a whole lot for one of these major corporations. But no one earning, by the way, no one earning less than $400,000 a year pays a single penny more in taxes. But 15% seems to me to be a bare minimum what corporations making tens of billions of dollars should be paying. And we're making this progress at the same time reducing the deficit. They're going to talk about big spending Democrats again? Guess what? I reduced the deficit last year, $350 billion. And this year, federal deficit is down $1 trillion plus. Hear me, that's a fact. And there's going to be hundreds of billions reduced over the next decade. But so what? These guys are the fiscally they're fiscally demented, I think. They don't quite get it. To deliver equal justice under the law, we're building a federal bench with judges that reflect all of America. Your dad talked about, give me judges and we'll straighten things out. Fair judges. Well, guess what? You probably heard of a lady called Ketanji Brown Jackson. I made a commitment to you, Al. I said I'm going to appoint the first black woman to the Supreme Court, and she's about the smartest one of all of them, I might add. And by the way, we have appointed more black women to the federal circuit courts than every other president in American history combined. Every single president combined. And by the way, if you see Dick Durbin, Senator Durbin from Illinois, thank him. Thank him, because he got them through. And as so many of you worked so hard to pass the George Floyd and Policing Act, but since the Senate Republicans blocked it last year, I did what only thing I could do. I signed a historic executive order that included key elements of that bill for the at the federal level. It bans chokeholds and greatly restricts no-knock warrants. It creates a national database for officer misconduct that must be placed in the national database. To tighten the use of force policies, to emphasize de-escalation. We have to retrain cops as to why should you always shoot with deadly force. The fact is, if you need to use your weapon, you don't have to do that. And look, to call a fresh approach to recruit, how we hire, how we train, how we promote, and how we retain law enforcement that come from the neighborhoods that they serve and know the people they're charged to protect. Now, I know a lot of people say community police is not a good idea. Come to Wilmington, Delaware with me, with the old neighborhood I used to work in on the east side called the Bucket. They need protection. They're asking for protection, overwhelmingly black community. But they want cops who are fair. They want cops who know their communities. They want cops who are going to be doing it by the numbers. And folks, that's tied to more community policing and advancing public trust and safety. Now, that's also why about a month after Buffalo and Uvalde, and I visited both, I signed the first major gun safety legislation in nearly 30 years. And I'll say what I said then, I'll say it over and over again. I am going to get assault weapons banned. I did it once, I'm going to do it again. There's no social redeeming value. Deer aren't wearing Kevlar vests out there. What the hell you need an assault? No, I'm serious. And ban the number of bullets that go in a magazine. There's no need for any of that. I love my right-wing friends who talk about the tree of liberty is water with the blood of patriots. If you need to work about taking on the federal government, you need some F-15s. You don't need an AR-15. I'm serious. Think about it. Think about the rationale for this. It's about money. Money, money, money. Meanwhile, we're making historic investments in community violence interventions. Studies have shown that reduced violent crime up to 60%. We've seen this kind of impact in Baltimore and Sacramento. And by the way, even if I didn't want to do this, I'd be in real trouble. My daughter's a social worker, and this is what she does. And so if I didn't, I'd be in real trouble with my Ashley. You got an Ashley, we got an Ashley. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking. And one other thing about equal justice. I'm keeping my promise. No one, I'll say it again, no one should be in federal prison for the mere possession of marijuana. No one. In addition to that, they should be released from prison and completely pardoned and their entire record expunged, so that if they have to ask, have you ever been, you can honestly say no. Folks, I just signed legislation to empower the FCC to cap the cost of phone calls from prison. Prisoners charged and incarcerated people. It's a step just to allow it for some dignity. A lot of federal prisoners are put in prisons, and they shouldn't be, far from where they live. They should be able to communicate with their families, with their children. And we brought Brittany Griner home just in time for Christmas. And we have more to bring home as well. Last year, I also held the first of its kind White House summit against hate-fueled violence that many of you call for and supported. And Rev, thank you for that as well. Together, we're saying out loud, and we're saying it clearly, that in America, hate will not prevail. As my dad used to say, but it's not original to him, he'd say, Joey, silence is complicity. Silence is complicity. We cannot remain silent, even if all we're doing is pointing it out and putting pressure on it to change. Silence is complicity. For example, with your help, I signed a law, 100 years in the making, to finally making lynching a federal hate crime. to silence, as your dad said, the crying voice of little Emmett Till, screaming from the rushes of the Mississippi. Folks, it takes too long. And you've just shown me at the bill signing for other victories, to enshrine marriage equality into the law, to make Juneteenth the first new federal holiday since the establishment of Dr. King's holiday. The idea, if we can hold a second here, the idea that we're supposed to remain silent on the abuses of the past, as if they didn't occur, that's not being woke, that's being honest. That's talking about history. Well, folks, but we have a lot of unfinished work to do, though. A lot of unfinished work. We have to keep building on it and defend our progress, because this new Congress, look, I know I get criticized from some of you and some folks in our party, my party, but I'm ready to work with the new Republican House on any Republican or any Republican Congress to make progress for the people of America. But like many Americans, I was disappointed to see the very first bill that the House Republicans, and Nancy, you probably rolling over when you saw it, are bringing to the floor that would help the wealthy people and big corporations cheat on their taxes at the expense of ordinary middle-class taxpayers. You know, all these new IRS agents we have is because they fired a lot of them and a lot of retiring. And guess what? Who needs serious agents to know what they're doing and not doing? The billionaires, the multi-millionaires. And according to nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, this one bill alone will add $114 billion to the deficit. This is their first bill. And they campaigned on inflation. They didn't say if elected their plan was to make inflation worse. Plus, House Republicans introduced another bill on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, blocking action that would help lower gasoline prices and help consumers. They're preparing to vote on a third bill. They want a national sales tax. Now, let me say this again. I know if I said that, it sounds like, what's Biden making up here? They want to raise tax the middle class by taxing thousands of everyday items, from groceries, gasoline, clothing, cutting taxes for the wealthiest, because they want to supplant the money lost from taxes on the millionaires and billionaires with a sales tax on virtually everything in the country. What in God's name is that all about, other than what is obvious? They want working class folks to be paying another 10, 20% in their taxes, depending on where they live and how they're spending the money. And they're going to reduce taxes for the super wealthy. Now, if we didn't see it, I think this is making this stuff up. If I told you in 2023 a party was going to run on a national sales tax, well, that's how they're starting their new term. Cutting taxes for billionaires. And by the way, the number of billionaires went up during the recession. Up. They didn't go down, they went up. Raising taxes on working families, making inflation worse. Let me be clear. If any of these bills happen to reach my desk, I will veto them. Any of them. What I was saying during this last election cycle, this off-year election, this next thing, everybody said, you got to be making this up, Biden. Well, they're going to continue to try to cut Social Security or Medicare, which Americans have been paying into it with every single paycheck they've earned since they first got their first job when they were 16 years old. But if Republicans want to work together on real, that's what they want to, they're going to argue that the thing is that for them to be sustained, you're going to have to change the way in which it works. Instead of putting more money in to guarantee Social Security, they're going to kind of cut Social Security, cut Medicare. Look, if they want to work together in real solutions to lower inflation, create jobs, and build an economy that works for everybody, I'm ready. One more thing. I don't want to hear a word from the other side about my student debt relief plan. Let me tell you why I say that. It's going to help tens of millions of folks on Pell Grants. Were hit financially because of the pandemic. 70% of black college students receive Pell Grants. For many black students, the saving will be significant in my debt relief plan, including wiping out their student debt completely. That's a real game changer. And by the way, it will increase economic growth, not diminish it. But the other side is dead set against it. These are the same folks who didn't have any problem at all during the pandemic to vote for and make sure they get this so-called pandemic relief loans. We all supported it. But guess what? A lot of these folks in the Congress on the Republican side were beneficiaries of these debt relief loans to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars. Not individual. I think the highest individual one was $1,200,000 or something. I didn't hear a word. I did not hear a word from them about they shouldn't be getting that relief. We didn't limit how much. We said if you had a loss and it was legitimate in business, then you get to wipe it away. And they're complaining about some kid being able to take away $20,000 in student debt that keeps him and his wife or his husband or her husband from being able to buy a home or start a business or just get going. Or these same folks who are going after us, they're the ones who voted for the tax benefits of the wealthiest and biggest corporations that weren't paid for. The Trump tax cut was well over almost $2 trillion. Not a penny of it was paid for. So give me a break. Give me a break. Currently, the only thing blocking my plan is them suing us. My administration is making the case to the Supreme Court, and I'm confident in the legal authority to carry out our plan. You know me. I said you had my back. I said I'd have yours on this one and so much more. I have your back. We got to stand together. We got to stand together, including protecting a woman's right to choose. We have to continue to fight for racial justice. We got to cut black child poverty. We cut it in half in 2021 because of the child tax credit. We should be permanently cut it. Now, I need your help to make it permanent. I was pleased to see Democrats and Republicans work together to pass the Electoral Count Reform Act to protect the will of the people. Nancy, thank you for getting that done. And a peaceful transfer of power. But we have to get the votes in Congress for the John Lewis Voting Right Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. That's why I went to Atlanta a year ago to make clear we cannot let the filibuster be an obstacle in protecting the sacred right to vote, period, if we get there. Let me close with this. Many of you have been working on these issues for a long time. Over the past 2 years, we've gotten an awful lot done together. We got a lot done together. So let's keep it going. We have the most vibrant economy in the world right now, in the world. We're doing better than any other major nation in the world today. And that's what I thought about yesterday at Ebenezer and that inflection point in history we're at. The path is clear. To go forward, we need to go together. So let's be guided by Dr. King's light and by the charge of Scripture, which is, let us never grow weary in doing what is right, for if we do not give up, we will reap our harvest in due time. Well, we're going to reap the harvest. Let's remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there is nothing beyond our capacity. Nothing, nothing, nothing if we do it together. So God bless you all. God bless the King family. And ladies and gentlemen, may God protect our troops. Thank you so very much.